Mma sat down, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She wasn't sure she knew what she was doing though, because if she knew, she would not be going anywhere with this man. Which beach restaurant are we going to? My house. You own a beach? She asked in panic. It's called Eden Castle. So that's where you're taking me? Uche could hear the panic in her voice that she was trying to conceal and was doing a bad job at. It would have been my pleasure, but Eden Castle would take about 2 hours to get to. At my townhouse, I have a beach I share with all my neighbors. If we're lucky, we might find it to ourselves. Your house? I didn't realize. And you're having second thoughts? Well, it's just that it's getting late and I wonder. Hey! He touched her knees. I am not a rapist or a murderer. She looked at him with shock. I never implied that you were. Then stop being afraid and let's enjoy dinner. I am not afraid. Uche laughed. We are almost there. She saw his house come into view. Was this what he called a townhouse? The place looked more like a mansion and it glistered with lights. This was where the richest of the rich lived in wealth and splendor. She saw him punch some numbers into the dashboard and the gate opened, and she watched in awe as they drove in. As if he knew what she was thinking, he began to explain. I have codes in all my cars. It's for security. A man in my position can't afford to be careless. Is your life constantly in danger? You can never tell how many people want you dead for some very flimsy excuses. Have you given them a lot of flimsy excuses? A businessman cannot help that. Sometimes you fire some lazy workers who thought you were too cruel, and sometimes it might be someone on your level. She was very concerned that his life could be in danger. As the car pulled to a stop, she turned to him. Shouldn't you go around with bodyguards then? Was it concern he had in her voice? It intrigued him. None of his other lady friends had ever shown such concern before, and he hastened to assure her, I don't need one. I was with the SEAL for a few years, so babe, I can take care of myself, he smiled. Yet you should have bodyguards. What's one man against 5 men with guns? The door was opened by a young girl. Mma wondered who the girl was. She saw Uche stiffen, and she had come to know that as a sign of rising temper. Where's your mother? Uche asked. She's putting finishing touches to dinner and asked me to see to the door. Mma watched the girl as she spoke, and when their eyes met, she was surprised to see that the girl's eyes reflected nothing but friendliness. She didn't have time to dwell on the thoughts as Uche was leading her into the house and explaining about the girl. She's my housekeeper's daughter. He led her to the living room and she nearly cried out at its magnificence. It looked like nothing she had ever seen. Her entire house could fit into the living room. Your house is very beautiful. Thank you. He turned to her and handed her a drink. He watched her hesitate. It is non-alcoholic. She accepted the drink and sat down. Unless you prefer here, let's proceed to the beach. She stood up and followed him. The beach was a long stretch of white sand. It was beautiful. There was a full moon and the sky was filled with stars. She closed her eyes in sheer delight and took a long deep breath. It was like something out of a fairy tale. He grasped her wrist and led her to a patch on the sand that had been overlaid with blankets. She looked around the place and sighed again. If this was how he wooed his women, no wonder they rushed after him like bees to pollen. It's magical here. She breathed and he chuckled and began to pour the wine. I'm glad you like it. He handed her the wine. She took it without asking him. She knew he would never give her alcohol to drink. Was that the beginning of trust? She asked herself. For a man the world had dubbed the worst playboy. But sitting with him and gazing at nothing but the stars, he didn't seem anything like the cruel heartbreaker he had been dubbed a lot of times. The housekeeper came with the dishes, distracting her. You will enjoy immense cooking. Mma smiled. I can't wait. The food looked quite good, and she didn't know She was actually hungry until she saw the food and her stomach growled. The taste of the jollof rice with fried plantain and vegetable sauce was different from all she had ever tasted. "You are right, that woman is a genius," she said, eyeing the side dishes. "You know, every time I look at you, I am reminded of a woman. She's one of my mother's protégé." "Really? Do you know the woman that owns Body Talk?" "Amber, of course yes." "Are you related?" "No, I don't know her one-on-one, but she's my role model." Mma had also wondered at the resemblance between her and Amber, but she had concluded it was a mere coincidence. "You share the same beautiful features. Now she's in her 50s, but she doesn't look a day beyond 35. Mma watched the way he described the woman and wondered if there was more to it than the woman being his mother's protégé. She couldn't believe she was jealous of the woman. She was not only jealous of the woman, she was jealous of every other woman he might be interested in. "You could be her lost relative." "Not a chance," she said. She didn't want him reinforcing her childhood wishes that Amber could actually be her mother. "I see you don't want to acknowledge the possibility. I have outgrown wishing that my mother would show up one day," she smiled, ruefully, and immediately changed the topic. "So what exactly do you do that gives you all this money?" "I'm into a lot of things," he replied lazily, raising his glass to his lips. She watched him drink and swallowed hard. She couldn't believe she found the simple task of drinking so exciting. Would she ever recognize herself again? "But I command a good part of the oil industry in Nigeria and a good percentage around the world. Then there is shipping, manufacturing of raw materials and end products. We also own Silverline Bank. Entertainment and tourism, of course. You must know Dream Towers. We have it spotted everywhere in the world and a few in Nigeria, mostly in the Pacific regions, and a little bit of this and that." Mma made sure her mouth was not hanging open. He was virtually into everything. Then she looked around her surroundings and wondered how she expected to have a serious platonic relationship with this man. "How do you cope?" "It's easy to lose count. I have capable people working with me, and they know I don't suffer fools gladly." She sighed in wonder and closed her eyes. Suddenly she felt inferior because she had just understood the kind of man she was dealing with. Uche knew she was overwhelmed. In his experience, this was usually where he began to get bored with the women he dated. Once they understood how rich he was, they became too eager to please him. He wondered what was going on in her mind. Had she realized he was too rich and was now plotting her next move on trapping him good and proper? Irritated, he pushed away the food. "I should go home. It's getting late." She was leaving? No, that was new. Most girls he had known became more pliant and willing after learning how rich he was. But the night had just started. We are yet to swim in that ocean. She looked up shocked. "I am not going to swim in that water this night, and neither are you." She didn't know why the thought scared her. The truth she was too scared to face was that she wasn't about to let him die, not when she had just found him. "Don't tell me you're afraid of water," he laughed, drawing her to her feet. "I am not afraid of water. I just don't like swimming when it is dark. The ocean is safe. I wouldn't risk my life." "Who is to tell the scavengers that ONUOHA is on the prowl? Keep away." He laughed. "So what do you suggest we do instead? Because the night is still too young." Mma became nervous all of a sudden. She had not properly reviewed the situation. They were alone on the beach, and only the heavens knew what was going on in his mind. "I must really start going," she heard herself say again. He wondered if she was really as innocent as she acted. He doubted if she had much experience with men, contrary to the impression she gave out about herself. "Absolutely not. I'm not letting you go anytime soon. Let's walk a bit," he suggested. He wanted to bring down her anxiety, which almost resembled virginal fears. Mma found herself falling into step with him. He took her hands and they began to walk. Tell me about the fashion industry, he surprised her by asking. She had thought all he would be thinking about would be how to get her into his bed. Do you have a business interest in our industry? It depends on what you tell me. It is still a growing one in this country, but it has got great potentials because no other industry in the world can do without us. Is that true? Can you imagine yourself going to work without clothes? She had to chuckle at the sight her mind had conjured. It has happened before. The early men went around nearly naked. If the same case is applicable to us now, I would like to think we'd manage just fine. Well, let's stick to the 21st century. The early days are gone and man continues to develop. You are right, he smiled at her. So tell me why a 21st century man like me cannot do without you. Business speaking, of course. Well, because we give you the class and grace you need to excel in your world. You can't go to your meetings wearing shredded jeans and t-shirts. Neither can you go to a beach party in a tuxedo. We define what is appropriate at any given time. We define lifestyle and we create elegance for those who can't afford to be ordinary. Take a look at yourself and tell me that being distinct and unique doesn't speak volumes about you in any gathering you find yourself. That is what we do for you. No one who is eager to succeed in his chosen career can afford to ignore us. And that is virtually every single person in the world. Wow, I am dazzled. So when I say the industry has potentials, I am not talking about a group of select few who could afford to drive cars or own houses or go to school. I am talking about every single person in the world. And think about the money to be made from about 8 billion people. I am impressed. I am tempted to hire you, he laughed and stopped. So what is your place in this ocean of potentials you've just described? Mma is mostly bespoke fashion for people like you who want to stand out exclusively, but recently we have diversified into ready-to-wear clothes in commercial quantities. That is why I'm working hard every day to see that I spread my tentacles by getting money magnets like you involved. He smiled. Have you been suffering my presence because of that? He saw the flicker of shock in her eyes and it pleased him. She was not, he concluded. I enjoy your company, Uche, and that is the only reason I'm here. Still, if you are going to invest in the industry, I would rather you do it through my label. He watched her and knew she was being honest, and then he bent down and looked at her intensely. You know, I have never pined for another woman the way I do you. Why do you think that is? I am very different from the sort you are used to dating. And then he kissed her, tentatively at first, then with so much ardor that had both of them shivering. Let's go inside. I want to make love to you the first time in a bed. Her fears returned with full force. Of course she was not going to say yes. There was no way she was going to sleep with him. She had to find a way to say no without sounding like a total imbecile. I don't think so. I should start going, she said, sounding worse than an imbecile. I know you want to. In her confusion, she remembered Ken. I can't cheat on my fiancé. Why do you choose to waste your time with a man who doesn't rouse you like I do? You can't tell that he doesn't, she replied, trying to sound angry, but failing. I can tell by the way you respond to me. Right now, your mind might be feeling a little reluctant, but your body is trembling with anticipation. You wouldn't want me this much if Ken could give you the same pleasure. She couldn't say anything. He was telling the truth, and she didn't know how to deny it. Sooner or later, you are going to make up your mind on who you want. I don't share, and I don't want that little time of yours that Ken is too busy to have. He kissed her again briefly. I will let you go home tonight, Ma, and never again. He began to lead her back the way they came from. The SUV crawled to a stop in front of her house and she looked at him, meaning to say a quiet good night and getting out of the car. I am sorry. I am going to say my goodbye here. I don't trust myself to be inside your house and behave. The way he said it brought a shiver that was fast becoming familiar with her down her spine. She reached for the door handle, but he stopped her. But that doesn't mean I will not say goodbye at all. He drew her into his arms. Forget Ken. There is no way I'm going to let him have you now.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home. Love, sweet love, it's you I'm dreaming